Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Post. My next guest studied journalism at university, but for nearly a decade now, she's been working with what she calls the dark side of journalism, aka brand and content marketing. Still a writer at heart and totally obsessed with the Oxford comma, she has held titles such as storyteller, head of social media, editor, and head of brand and buzz. She led the creation of influencer marketing program at Breptol and created the social media strategy, which took Cinch organically from 4,000 to 110,000 followers in just 2 years. She recently became senior content manager at Mentimeter, where she's developing a new content and social strategy to take the company to new heights. Without further ado, please welcome to the show Solveig Rundquist. Solveig, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Amazing. I'm so excited to have you here today. And before we get into the nitty gritty and all the amazing social strategies and things you are doing at Mentimeter, I would love if you could just give our audience a brief look at your professional journey and how you ended up at Mentimeter.
Sure. I would honestly say that I ended up here by accident. I think throughout my whole life, I've been a storyteller in the sense that I was a total nerd and I always loved reading. I was good at writing. I was obsessed with grammar. And one thing just led to another. I didn't know what to do with my life. I ended up studying communications just because it was so broad. I was like, I can do something with that. And then very last minute, I think when I had just 1 year left of university, I had this idea like, oh, wait, maybe journalism is something I should do. Jumped into that. And then, like you said, gradually that went from a more, I call it real journalism, into content marketing. I was the first content editor at The Local, which is Sweden's largest English language news source. And from there, like I was doing everything in that role. I was doing the ideas that we pitched to clients when native advertising became a big thing. And then actually doing the interviews, doing the research, writing the articles, and then like doing the social media campaign part of that as well, tracking and reporting on the results and going back to the clients and doing all that management. So it was really very like full funnel, the whole process.
Mhm.
And from there, it became just more and more of content marketing, social media marketing, brand. I've jumped around. That sounds bad, but I've been at a lot of Stockholm tech companies, very international companies the whole time. I'm based here in Stockholm, Sweden. And it's just gotten deeper and broader all at once, I'd say. So for about a decade now, I've been working with social brand and content marketing. And Mentimeter is a company that's been on my radar for a long time, and because of their products, which I think is just very cool and very relevant, but also because they are famous for their culture. And it's a very
Mhm.
culture-driven person. That's something that was important to me. So I feel like I've really ended up happily by accident in the exact right place.
That's amazing. And anyone who maybe hasn't heard of Mentimeter, what is the biggest value that you bring to your customers, and what specifically does your role entail there?
Mentimeter is what we like to call an audience engagement platform. And in English, that means we put an end to death by PowerPoint. If you think about all of the boring Teams meetings you have, I'm not bashing Teams, but any meeting, whatever platform you use, when you're being talked at
Yeah.
and you start tuning out, we make meetings engaging in the sense that all of your audience can give live real time input. And there are many ways of doing that. It can be reacting and sending like little emojis or comments or questions on screen. You can do voting, pin on image, play interactive quizzes, and you can get the results from your audience live, real time, and visualize it on the screen so that it really makes it more of a dialogue rather than a monologue. And
Mhm.
of course, then you can take those insights with you. You can see trends, you can get the data afterwards. So it makes sure that every voice is heard and makes people feel more comfortable contributing. And then you can use these insights, of course, to impact data and business decisions afterwards. So it's perfect in both a business context and an educational context as well.
Amazing.
And my role then, sorry, these are long answers, but so my role at Mentimeter is senior content manager. And as part of that, my role is really to help to maximize the impacts of a multi-channel strategy and ensure that we have the right kind of content and message in each channel, targeting the right audience. So translated, I really want to make sure that every single piece of content is on brand and also reaches its full potential. So I view it as like a content enablement role. We have so many content creators here at the company, whether or not that's part of their title, but people in marketing, of course, but also support, sales, thought leaders, the people and culture team. There are so many people who are creating some type of content, and I want to amplify everything we do.
Amazing. With that, I think you are the perfect person to talk about this. So, historically, social media has been thrown at either the youngest person at an organization or an intern. So I would love to know from you, why is it so important that social media is a full time of the marketing team? Why do we need to have a dedicated social media manager from someone who has experienced this firsthand?
I feel strongly about this, but I should start by saying that until very recently at Mentimeter, our social media actually was run by an intern, and she's a total star. So there's nothing wrong inherently with interns and them handling social, not if they're good at it. But I think the problem frequently is if social is given to an intern or the youngest person in the company simply because it's not a company priority. If it's not viewed
Mhm.
as a priority and they're like, okay, someone we don't even pay, for instance, can take this, then that's a symptom of a greater problem, which is simply not
Yeah.
taking it seriously. And I think that today, no one would argue that social media isn't an important part of marketing. I think, on the contrary, it's hard to do marketing without social media these days. But I think that when a company first starts out, of course, it makes sense that social isn't a top priority, that maybe it's one of many hats type of role. Because, of course, if you only have two, three, five marketers, then probably social media is just going to be one slice of someone's role, and that's fine. But once a company has reached a certain growth point and a certain ambition level, in order to maximize the potential of social media, I do feel strongly that it's a full time role because the sky really is at the limit when it comes to social. But you can't achieve that potential if you're only spending an hour a week or even an hour a day on it. So, what I
Mhm.
usually see happen is that social media is just a part time role and then it becomes very reactive. It's an afterthought. It's, oh, let's throw something up on social. But there's not really time and space to be strategic about it. Whereas a full-time social media manager can be more proactive and make those like bigger bets, which really can pay off also from a business perspective, whether that be new content types, a new channel, influencer marketing, higher quality video, whatever it is, or even like simply engaging with the community and building those customer relationships via social. Because even just like answering comments in a good way and like trying to continue the conversation with your customers who are talking about you, these are things that are really hard to have time to do if it's not explicitly the focus of your role.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And thinking about the modern B2B buyer journey, we know that I think it's 80% of B2B buyers do their research on a new solution on social media. So it is critical that you have your social presence and your social strategy nailed down. And that can be, like you were saying, really challenging to do if you only have an intern, or maybe it's someone newer, hasn't been with the company long and doesn't know how to even talk about questions and things, because social media managers, you're replying to customers, you're replying to prospects, and sometimes the questions and comments can get tactical and people are asking you things that you need to be educated on, and it's not something that you might know how to answer if you're just an intern or maybe haven't been at the company very long. So it's so crucial that you do have a dedicated social media manager. And I see this all over LinkedIn. My whole feed is filled with, if your social media team is only a team of one, you're doing it wrong. You need a content creator, you need a social media manager themselves, a video creator. There is just so much that goes into the role of social. So even a one person team, it can be really challenging, or even if it's someone who hasn't been there that long, it's really challenging. So I completely agree with you. And I really want to talk to you about storytelling because I know you mentioned this earlier. And I think this is something that also social media managers need to master, because we are essentially showing up on social and telling the story of our company, engaging people along the way. We like to get really tactical on this show. So I'd love also at the end if you could share some of your tips and best tactics. But what does storytelling mean to you? And for anyone looking to strengthen their storytelling skills, what would you advise them to do?
So that was like three questions in one, and I love all of them. And you're going to have to stop me if I get too nerdy because obviously this is a topic that I'm really passionate
We
about.
love it. Go all in.
Okay, let's go. So there's a saying I really like, actually a Native American proverb that I really love, and it's tell me the facts and I will learn. Tell me the truth and I will believe. But tell me a story and it will live in my heart forever. And it's like you said, we know that a lot of these decisions are made via your network and in an emotional sense. I think I really believe strongly in this because story is what builds that emotional connection with your audience. And as we all know, there are stats on this everywhere. We know that's what drives the majority of buying decisions, even or even especially in B2B.
Yep.
And then, of course, what makes a good story? How do we craft a good story? It's about both the what and the how. So there are certain elements that good stories have, and then it also matters how you tell it. Let me organize my thoughts here. So I like to recommend, here's a very specific tactic. I recommend doing what I would call even a story audit
Mm.
and find the stories in the company. And if you can't find them, you need to create them. You need to do something worth talking about. So I'm not talking about coming up with a story out of thin air, but you need to shift from storytelling to what I like to call story doing.
Mm.
Usually there are a lot of stories already within the company, but either you take them for granted or like you mentioned, if someone is very new in the company, even like me and Mentimeter, maybe you just aren't aware of the stories. So it's good to start by asking people, everyone, interview them, or rather than an interview, just hang out with them, chat from founders to team members, HR, the board, an intern, anyone and everyone. Just talk to them and keep a notepad physically or on your phone and take notes, and you'll find that there are tons of stories worth telling. And if you really can't find any stories worth telling, then it's time to take some action. That doesn't mean you have to do some massive campaign. But an example I can give is that when I was working at Super Office, which is a CRM company, I found out in my first few months as I was speaking with various stakeholders that there had been a program called Do Stuff That Matters, which the founder had started, where they gave the platform for free to certain charitable organizations.
Mm.
But that program had faded out. And so when I found that out, we were able to take steps to bring it back, to do a good thing. And then there's something you could tell a story about, not a story about us, but it was relevant. It was still related to our values, culture, and yes, the product, but in a way that put something more meaningful in focus. Or
Mhm.
then, of course, it could also be you could do a story in a brand campaign way as well. At Cinch, for instance, another Stockholm tech company where I worked together with Edelman, we created the Text for Humanity campaign, which was a texting switchboard where you could send and receive positive text messages to and from strangers.
Mm.
And it was hugely successful and landed in media outlets like the Good News Network, which has like a crazy following on social media, because it was something worth doing. And something that's worth doing is usually worth talking about and spreading as well.
Mhm.
So look for the stories. You might find them where you don't expect them. And then if you can't find any, do them.
Yes.
So that's the starting point. And then beyond that, of course, it's also important to learn how to craft a story, like I said. And this is nearly a science. There's a very long tradition we can draw upon, stemming all the way back to Aristotle. Really, in his time, it was elements of drama, not storytelling per se, but I think it's obviously related because drama, the theater was their main medium of storytelling. And depending on which source you look at, there are 5 or 6 elements of a good story or drama, according to Aristotle, but they're pretty consistent. It's things like a story, a good story needs plot, of course. What is the action happening? So we're not just watching paint dry. Of course, you need the characters. You need the theme, which is what's the takeaway? What is it you want the audience to be thinking afterwards? Then you have what he called a diction, which I would call tone in sort of modern terms. What is the language you're using to tell the story? And spectacle, which is my favorite, which is the wow element, something a little bit unexpected. So
Mhm.
there are these elements. And then, of course, there's even another aspect of how the structure, the story arc, usually starting with some exposition and the rising action, the climax, the falling action, the resolution, making sure there's a story arc. So that's a very actionable one that you can also work on in storytelling. It's something that's very easy to implement in customer stories, for instance, albeit in a
Yeah.
simplified. If you look at who is the customer, what was their problem? Why was this problem urgent? How did we solve it? And then now that it is resolved, what were the results? So building that arc, you don't just tell like someone, oh, we did this and they have great results. No, in order to have the impact, you have to frame this problem. Oh no, what are we going to do? So it's really about building that arc as well.
Yeah. So when you are doing this on social media, is this something that you're doing in just one post? Are you doing it over time throughout a campaign? If a social media manager is like, okay, I want to hone it on storytelling, should they start writing post per post and crafting a story, or should they be looking like, how do I long term tell a story throughout a week or a month or a few months or the quarter?
It's absolutely both. I think we all should be in it for the long haul game, and there should be stories that are the red thread, so to speak, and connect everything you do as a company. And that's
Mhm.
part of your brand messaging as well. But I think it is also important on a post to post basis, in the sense that even starting with the hook, right? The
Yeah.
drama, you have to. The first war is the war for attention. People say in marketing sometimes. And so even just like how to craft your posts in such a way that there is that spectacle, the wow element, something
Mhm.
that people connect with or that just stops them. So there are definitely elements. You don't always have to have every element in every post. I'm not saying that every single post has to have character and plot and spectacle, but it is good to have these in mind and do a little bit of both in each. But I think that you will always have more impact if you can build even each post into long-term themes and stories that you are telling as a brand.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I know everyone listening in can use that right away. So thank you. And speaking of the hook and engaging your audience, I want to switch speeds a little bit and talk about LinkedIn. Because first of all, I love the Mentimeter LinkedIn. You guys get great engagement. So I want to know a little bit more about your social strategy there. And if you could walk through maybe a few of the main changes that you made when you joined, because you're absolutely crushing it there. If you want to talk about the content, engaging content types that have been working, I would absolutely love that as well.
Yeah, of course. First, thank you. I want to reiterate that we're just getting started, actually. And right now, our following is quite small compared to that of some of our competitors. And generally, it is easier to maintain a high engagement rate when you're small. It gets more difficult as you grow. But with that said, and as you said, the trends are all going in the right direction. We have a way higher engagement than our competitors, even when we post less than they do. And that's a great sign. We're very proud of that. And I cannot take all the credit for that. Speaking of interns, and I mentioned that until recently, we had one managing it. She is no longer an intern. She is now a part-time content creator. But there are people on the team who have been working with this for some time. Not actually a long time. It was only, I think, a few months ago that they started, but it's been going very well. So I would say step one is posting on a consistent basis, but that doesn't mean too much either. I've seen companies err on both sides where they're over posting and under posting. So at some companies, I've had to come in and say, we need to post once a day. At other companies, I've come in and said, hey, we need to only post once a day, like cool
Yeah.
it, stop posting every single time, 3, 4, 5 times a day.
Yeah.
Because the fact is as well that LinkedIn is not going to, or any channel really is not going to show all your posts to every person. And the more you post, it's not going to show 5 posts to you from Mentimeter. So if we are posting 5 times a day, then we're like harming the reach and thus engagement of each of them.
Mhm.
So the first thing is just getting a content calendar in place. And we also set up a weekly meeting to just discuss the results of the last week and the plan for this week. So that may seem obvious, but it's essential.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we have a lot more to do when we're still in the process of crafting our social media and content strategies. So we're still very much in an audit and analysis phase. But some aspects which will be essential moving forward are, of course, making sure that we are putting the right content on the right channel, not just saying and spraying, but making sure we know what channels are our enterprise prospects using
Mhm.
versus educators. And for me, variety is also essential. I think boredom kills a story. So we need to make sure that,
Yes.
of course, all the content is relevant, but that it also doesn't become too same, that we're not just posting the same type of thing over and over again, but different types, different topics, but still making sure they are all relevant. We're also looking at some different channels, some different content types, and having various stakeholders who are more or less responsible for contributing from various areas to make sure we have that variety and it doesn't become a marketing silo or megaphone, so to speak. And we're looking a lot more at becoming data-driven, of course, looking at our tech stack to make sure we can see the results of what we do on social and how it affects our growth and business in general to make more informed decisions about what we do there. But this is all very early stage. So, I'm happy it's going well. But I want to add that caveat that, we have a lot more work to do. And I think we're off to a great start. But there are a lot more things we have to get in place. And hopefully then things are really going to take off.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned different content for different channels, for the different industries that you're trying to target, because I think sometimes social media managers or even very small teams, they're so in the weeds that they're trying to just create content and get it out because with a small social team or one person in the function, it's very challenging to keep the strategy alive because the sheer amount of content that's needed, because most people are managing probably like 6 channels total, even more. So I like that you mentioned that and getting really strategic. And even going back, I really like how you called out reviewing the content performance from the last week. Because again, when you're in the weeds and just trying to push content out, sometimes I know as simple as it sounds, like just going back, like sometimes it just leaves your mind to go back and do that when really that is how you stay data driven, like seeing what content is performing, what content is resonating, and you can keep pushing that out. So I really like that you mentioned that. And kind of along those lines, is there anything that you're doing to make sure the right content reaches the right people at the right time? Is it just putting that content on specific channels? Are you utilizing hashtags? Are you utilizing employee advocacy? What are you doing to make sure that the right message lands in front of the right person?
Yes, all of the above. No, I would say again, there's a lot more we can do, and we're at the beginning of the journey. But my role at the company is new. We also have a customer life cycle manager, and she's also new in her role.
Mm,
And so we're very excited to tag team this and really work on this together. But of course, it's looking at what channels people use.
mhm,
So for instance, we see that on LinkedIn, we get a lot more of our enterprise prospects, of course, because it's a largely business and sales focused channel. But Mentimeter is also huge among educators. And we don't get as much interaction or mentions or even reach with educators there because it's not as relevant of a platform for them. Usually, as an educator, you're in the weeds with your students. You're not like scrolling LinkedIn and posting things there.
mhm.
But we see that, for instance, on Twitter or X, educators are actually, I'd say, shockingly active. I was a little bit surprised there, and constantly reaching out, asking questions, talking about us. So of course there's that channel issue, but then there's also, of course, the different markets in the sense that the educators who use Mentimeter are largely based in the US. So of course it's not just a matter of posting on X rather than LinkedIn, it's also in their time zone, of course. And then of course, what are we posting? Is that relevant for them? And so we need to make a lot more data-driven decisions. And we are working on like a data enrichment project and building a better tech stack. And of course, building a full view customer lifecycle for our different personas. And also working on updating and improving those customer personas as well. And then it's really a cross-functional effort. We have a sales enablement team. We have the customer lifecycle marketing team. We have brand marketing. And this is really a tag team where everyone is coming together to build this and to make sure that it's all synced, because we have a lot of different marketers and a lot of different people sending things out on various channels, email, social, PDFs, sales decks. And we're trying to map out that whole thing right now. So it's a massive project, but I think it's
Mhm.
off to a great start. And we'll see how it goes.
Amazing. I do want to add, I actually did used to be a teacher and I was never on LinkedIn. So it's funny you say that because I
Really?
did not even have an active LinkedIn account when I was a teacher because you are very in the weeds with your students. So I
Yeah.
totally feel you there. But I do want to talk about your executives and getting the wider organization as a whole on board with social, because with social, we know having it start from the top down is really powerful. So I'd love to know how you are getting stakeholders and executives on board and really empowering them to engage on social.
We are lucky in the sense that we have some, I would say, LinkedIn influencers in the company already. Johnny Varstrom, our CEO, is quite active, and as well, Anna Gullstrand, our chief people officer, people and culture officer, is I'd say huge on LinkedIn. She's amazing. So give her a follow if you don't already. Give them all a follow, actually. But there's a lot more we can do here as well. I know it's a recurring theme from me, but I think we're off to a good start because I mean, it really has to be a tandem project. If you just think about sales, for instance, marketing will never get sales to post on LinkedIn if it's just marketing making an ask on a consistent basis. I know because I've been there. I've been the marketing team nagging and saying, please. So I think there really has to be an internal push. And here at Mentimeter, we have a sales enablement team, which is amazing. People who like they're the translators between sales and marketing, and it's wonderful. But also having people just like within the sales organization who already use social media and believe in its power or have experience of its power and can be that sort of internal voice saying the same thing makes a huge difference. So, for instance, at one of my previous companies, I held a social selling training session about why sales should use LinkedIn. And I threw in a lot of the stats there about how they can meet their targets faster, how they will outsell their colleagues if they use social media. But it's totally different coming from a marketer.
Mhm.
Or here at Mentimeter, during my first month, actually, a sales colleague said, hey, I'm holding this session. Would you also like to contribute and do a little 5-minute thing? And I was like, yes, great. And I was, super eager to contribute 5 minutes. But I was also thrilled that I was just a little part of it and that it was coming from within the sales organization, because that type of buy-in, it makes it a totally different experience. So I think you have to start with the people who are already your advocates, in the sense, if there's someone who's social media, that's for kids, or it's not going to help me, or it's a waste of time. Don't start with those people.
Yeah.
Start with the people who are going to be the easiest and
Mhm.
turn them into sort of your heroes and your advocates. then use them as the positive shining examples to see, look what this person accomplished with this. And then of course we are also looking at an employee advocacy platform. That's how you and I know each other. So we are looking at, of course, ways to eliminate friction, because I think of course, the easier it is for people to do things, the more likely they are to do it. But then of course it has to be done in an authentic way. So
Yeah.
also showing people that, like, yes, you can post about Mentimeter, for instance, but that doesn't mean you have to sound just like the company. You can talk about it in a way that is authentic for you and your role and your interests. And that helps you and that helps us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think making sure that is authentic is so important. And once they start to see the results coming in from participating in employee advocacy or just social selling as a whole, that is really good for buy-in long term and seeing the results. So I completely agree with everything you just said. And we are nearing the end of the show here, but I have one final question for you that I ask all of my guests, and I'm so excited to hear your answer. So, what is one thing you wish your colleagues in other departments understood about working in content marketing or social media?
I have so many answers to this. Honestly, the first thing that pops into my mind is a reel from like Instagram, one of those like audios that you can use on your reels where there's just like this voice saying, everything is content, everything is content, everything is content. And I swear I hear this in my dreams or nightmares sometimes. But that might be the first thing, is that everything is content. So it does affect you.
Mhm,
And that doesn't mean it has to be hard. We are here to help. We are eager to help. But sometimes I feel like other people view content marketing as just like this, it's a blog machine, right? Rather than a support function, which really can impact every part and can help. Because it could be, for instance, you have a story to tell. Maybe you don't even realize you have a story to tell. Talk to us and we'll be like, oh my God, we can use that.
mhm,
So we can make you more represented. We can amplify voices. We can amplify the stories. We can also just help you with your copy. I can help you be a thought leader. If someone's, oh, hey, I'm going to dare to do a social media post, but like, oh, I don't know. Can you put another set of eyes on it? We are here to help because everything is content and we can get that big picture view and figure out how to weave all these small individual parts into a story which is greater than any of them. So it's not just writing a blog post. That's another thing, is they think we're a blog machine, but also think it's just super simple to like, oh, can you just throw this on social media? Can you just write a quick blog?
Yeah.
Um, so that would be another one, is it's a craft.
Mhm,
And that's something I'm getting a little bit touchy about now with all the conversations around AI, as I hear more and more voices saying, oh, do we really need to hire a full-time writer, or is AI enough? And I'm like, no, it's offensive to me. And I'm not saying that AI isn't good, because of course it's doing amazing things. But like the articles right now that are being written by AI, let's be honest, like I've seen worse from
mhm,
humans. I've seen way worse, but I've also seen way better, because it's a lot of it doesn't really make sense when you read it through. Like at first it sounds very fancy, but then you're like, wait, but what does this actually mean? What are they actually
mhm.
saying? And it's not as creative either. The fact is that we have a craft. And I think that
Yeah.
AI is something that we absolutely should use to work smarter and scale our work.
Mhm.
But we still need a human writer, because there are a lot of other professions who'd be very offended if I said, oh, should we not hire a salesperson? Maybe we can use AI for that.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm looking, for instance, I'm using AI, of course, for keyword research or for checking the SEO structure of an article, even checking tone of voice. You can like input your tone of
Mhm,
voice guidelines and use it as like an extra editor before it reaches the editor. Oh, am I using passive voice somewhere? There are a lot of really great ways to use AI to work smarter and faster and
mhm.
more efficiently. But in the end, I guess I just feel like writing is a craft
Yeah.
and it's hard to be good at it.
Mhm.
So appreciate us a little bit more. And then we'll be very, very glad to help you and
Yes.
amplify your voice and your story as well.
Yes, 100%. I completely agree because especially now with the use of AI, it is so noisy out there. Our feeds are overflowing with content. So now more than ever, I think content marketers have always been very strategic about the content that they're putting out being valuable and being creative and actually being able to help the other person on the side of the screen that is reading it. And I think with people using AI so much that we're losing that value in the content, and also we're stripping away the creativity. So then you just have a lot of lackluster content out
Right.
there. With today, it's almost 2024. We need to be engaging. I think you only have 3 seconds to engage someone. So if you're using AI to write all of your content, it's just not going to hit home how you need. especially with buyers on social media, we need to have our content extremely engaging, extremely valuable so we can stay top of mind. So I completely agree with everything you're saying about AI. And with that, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate how tactical you got breaking down everything. And I'm so excited to clip the storytelling part because I think you nailed it. I think that's going to help a lot of social media managers and content marketers. So thank you so much, Solveig, for joining me behind the post.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.